Yes, our topic is visiting sons and revelations, benefits and blessings. And I think you're going to hear a nicely unified presentation, which will cover all the arguing we've done before we get to this point, which we've done a lot. We do a lot of presentations together. And I think we learn an enormous amount. The final working of it is kind of hard to integrate at times because we're coming from two different approaches and two different interpretations. But the result, once we smooth it out, I think is fairly rich. Marilyn's going to get into something first, but I wanted to show you something else. I just added this slide this morning, and I've used this a lot lately. It does relate to what's going on in this presentation, but it relates to a lot more. As an English teacher and a literature teacher, I am always interested in the fact that I think, there was a time a few years ago that we created a bookmark from our society to pass out to people at a book fair. And one of the things on the bookmark said, a literary critic from Chicago has said, this is the best written book I've ever seen. And the fact that I was the critic really didn't take that away from anything. It was that critic did feel that way. And one of the reasons is that it makes everything, well, two things, well integrated and with a sense of purpose and why it's there. I'm in the process of creating something about the papers 104, 5, and 6, which have to do with being reality, among other things. And the Melchizedek goes to great pains to tell us why we need to learn this, even though we can't always understand it. And the book does that throughout. It integrates magnificently, and it gives us a reason why we're studying what we're studying. So I want to read just this one thing here about purpose that relates specifically to the Lucifer rebellion and the planetary rebellion, which we'll be talking about, but only as a springboard, using a lot from what Chris and Barb gave us yesterday. The problems associated with human existence on Urantia are impossible. One of those few times that an all or nothing statement is made, are impossible of understanding without a knowledge of certain great epochs of the past. Notably, the occurrence and consequences of the planetary rebellion. Although this upheaval did not seriously interfere with the progress of organic evolution, it did markedly modify the course of social evolution and of spiritual development. The entire superphysical history of the planet was profoundly influenced by this devastating calamity. Well, that tells us why we need to know about it, but there's a larger principle here which applies to all history. When we study history, we know more about the present, we know more about ourselves, and we know more about how to respond to the present and the problems of the present and the future, origin, history, and destiny. And as Barb and Chris were telling us, and we're going to be doing something a little bit similar, why it's important for us to be able to apply those to the knowledge of not just the rebellion, but everything else the Urantia book tells us, including the default of Adam and Eve. It's there for a reason. We will understand many, many things, many, many themes in this 2,100-page book better if we know where things came from. Marilynn?
Yeah, welcome to the session, and thank you all for coming. What I'd like to do is just a little bit of background information. I realized that when I started a study of the sons, that I thought it was really easy. But, you know, a friend of mine, John Causland, I don't know if you knew him, but he brought his telescope to the, summer study sessions for a lot of years. But, he said the Urantia book is like a puzzle. And that puzzle means that we go all over the place. So whenever we have a son, it could be here, or you could hear about it in this paper. And I think that I agree with that idea after kind of researching this a bit, that we all have, that it is a puzzle, understanding the sun. And, the eternal sun paper is one of the shortest papers in the book. So, that kind of says to you, well, it's not surprising. We don't know much about the sun. But if we go ahead and look at the mercy of the sons, and actually our prayers go through the sun as well, that God is love, the Son is mercy, mercy is applied love, the Father's love in action in the person of his eternal Son. So the Son plays a really big intermediary role. And now, as the consequence of this love and mercy of our Creator Son, Michael of Nebadon, Urantia has now experienced 3 new epical revelations to help the planet, eventually to reach light and life, the culminating evolutionary attainment, but from entirely different direction. And I think that's kind of, if there would be a main theme for the day, that would be one of them, that we are no longer in the normal state of how evolution and revelation interact. I'd also like to begin with a prayer, and this prayer is about God's love and mercy. So, and I know Katie did a beautiful job, but if you'll come with me into the God of mercy, I'd like to say it and then maybe have a minute of just thinking about what mercy is. So, dear God, in whom mercy is endless and your treasury of love is inexhaustible, I invite you into my heart. Come and dwell there and transform me with the abundant outpouring of your divine love and mercy. May my love for you be a light of hope to those who are in need, and above all, allow your presence in my life to forgive and serve others as you have forgiven me. Send me forth to bear your message of mercy to all. I choose this day to forgive those who have wronged me. Give me willing feet, gentle hands, listening ears, and searching eyes to make me a vessel of your mercy. Help my acts of mercy flood my mind, heart, passions, feelings, and every part of my soul. Make me a channel of your perfect and unlimited love for all your creatures in my acts and my words. With great confidence in your love for me and all of your creatures in the universe, I pray to do your will and become an instrument of your mercy. So the next few slides, thank you. I just think we don't think about mercy so much, we think about love, but not all the mercy that the sons have given to us. The next slide is really hard to read, and I have it it should be in the chat as a document that's much bigger. So all I want to do is kind of refresh our understanding of the sons. And as I said, it was kind of a journey of back and forth and away and there and how, and oh my gosh, they're all over the place, these sons. But I want to give some distinction to it because it comes up whenever we talk about revelation. Because every revelation except the Urantia book was a personal revelation of a son. And interestingly, in the Urantia book, part 1, they're all sons, lower level sons, but they're all sons who have indicted, presented, and narrated these papers. And I think that lets you know, again, the mercy ministry, how can we help recover from some of the defaults. But so I'd like to just make a few points on it, and as I said, you can have it. So there's two kinds of suns. The paradise suns are the first type, and then local universe suns. And the difference between the two is that the paradise suns originated from two or more paradise suns. So what we see in this kind of way of looking at things on that middle column, it'll talk about, it'll give some ideas of who those suns are. And we have three of them. Teacher suns, Trinity teacher suns, who were created by all three. Creator suns are Michael suns, and the magisterial suns, which they call the Avonus suns. And they don't really appear without a planetary mission, a magisterial mission, or mortal bestowal on Urantia. So magisterial suns are really quite important, and they're at quite a high level. They were created by two of the deities. Now, the local universe suns are also of dual origin. And what we can say about them is that we know them by different names, but these are the suns. I've included the life carrier suns because to me that's point zero. Zero starts at the life carrier bringing life to Urantia. And I think that's important when we look at the different planetary epochs and what has happened within them. So the second thing, paradise suns, local universe suns. Another distinction between these guys is that they're descending suns, and descending suns are really important to us. All descending gods, this is paper 21-1. All ascending sons of God have high and divine origins. They are dedicated to the descending ministry of service on the worlds and systems of time and space. They are to facilitate the progress in the paradise climb of the lowly creatures of evolutionary origin. The ascending sons of God, of course, of which we are one. But surprisingly, there's some other characters that are equally helpful, and those are Adam and Eve, who are not descending sons. Actually, they're ascending sons, and that is always that kind of interested me because I think about them more as so high that they're not coming up with us, but we are ascending sons. And Adam and Eve, the material sons, are also an ascending sun. Another thing that I just like to highlight about the suns is the what we know about them, and that's kind of in that third column. So I tried to look throughout the book and find out where we know these suns from. And really, we know most of them from our local universe suns. We've got Jesus Michael, we've got Macaveno Melchizedek, we've got the planetary prince, and then Lucifer, planetary prince Caligastia, who hung out with Lucifer and ended up causing great distress on Urantia. I would say if anyone has questions, I just look at it and email me if you see something that's wrong or whatever. But anyway, that's kind of just the orientation. The suns are revelatory. They're bestowal suns. They go on missions, as we've seen with Melchizedek. So to introduce the comparison to the planetary mortal epochs, I put together a little chart. And again, I see that life carrier suns is 0.0. Then we had our planetary prince come, Caligastia. And he was supposed to develop a world center of civilization, culture, philosophy, and that transitions to the tasks of Adam and Eve. And I was kind of surprised by that definition a little bit because they had a bigger role than we often give to Caligastia. So this world center was going to flourish, and Adam and Eve were going to come in and make everything fine. And they were to build on the cultural center and social patterns of planetary conduct and improve the evolutionary race. Next, we come to our emergency son, the Melchizedek, who came down to help us be prepared for Jesus. And also, he brought with him a bunch of messages that were really important to us at that time in our evolution. Next, we have Michael Jesus. Lots of things you could say that he did, but one of the most important is that he brought man to God and God to man. And the reason he hung out so long, of course, is that that's what he was doing. He could have left at any time. And then we have the Urantia book, which is to expand cosmic consciousness and enhance spiritual perception. And I think that's the personal level of how the Urantia book has affected our lives. So we're going to go on with David, and he's going to talk about how you have some objectives or questions, I think, next.
Well, that wasn't good. It didn't move. Here we are. As we go through the presentation, just some things to kind of keep in mind. There's 6 questions, but there could be 66, and not just because it's a number. How is the mercy proffered to ascending will creatures by members of the family of the eternal Son significant to our lives? You know, Marilynn just spoke about that. One of the things we both agreed on right off the bat is that we should open with mercy. That's the first idea, the theme, the beautiful theme to open up with. And lo and behold, in our keynote speech with Tim on Thursday night, that was probably the major point that he made. So there's a core idea here that is very important, especially as we go from the first 2 failed revelations to the next 3 that are in response to the problems that they had, or at least somewhat failed. So mercy should be overhanging everything we talk about, and we see the eternal Son's mercy when we look at Michael or Jesus. What is the normal plan of planetary mortal epics, and how does Urantia differ from it? And that's the kind of the core theme of what we're talking about. The next slide gets into it. How are the emergency revelation of Macaveno Melchizedek and the unique revelation of the Urantia book also part of Urantia's unusual Bistole son revelation? This point will be made more clearly, but you've got to think of Macaveno and the Urantia book. They're bookends. There may be more, but both of us are here because of the unusualness of the Bistole son revelation, which was Jesus' life on earth. How singular did Jesus' life on Urantia make this world? What is needed today from the Urantia revelation, and how can we help? And what is needed today in Urantia from us individually? And we'll be exploring that when we have you break out into groups later on. So there are normal planetary mortal epics. Paper 52, I think it is. Goes into great depth as to what the expected order is. And as Barb said last night, and Chris, with his wonderful demonstration of the penguins scurrying all over the place, the normal order is just not what we're doing at all. So if you remember, the overall theme here is how Urantia is unique. And this is one of the major ways. It's causal, though. History does that, and that's when history gets fascinating. The Urantia book is so tightly intertwined And one of the things that was kind of fun about this topic when we talked about it and planned it is it's so tightly intertwined. If you look at, actually, I wanted to stop at this point and just talk about it. So Thursday night was a keynote, so wonderfully done. Friday morning, being a decimal planet, that's what we started with before any problems, but it meant that the whole menu that were served to Urantia was different. It's every 10 planets, and there's all kinds of things we did differently. Last night, the consequences of rebellion and default, which lead to what we're talking about today, the unusual revelations that have come in response. And because of that, tonight we'll be hearing about the planetary mortal, not planetary mortal epics, the planetary government, which is very unusual, but it's as a consequence of all the things that have come before. And then on Sunday, Stuart Kerr will be wrapping it up with an overview that focuses on a particular part of this. So all of this is intertwined, and you need to see it that way because it's more interesting that way, and it makes more sense that way. So since the rebellion and the default of Adam and Eve, Urantia has pursued an increasingly deviant path compared to the normal order of planetary mortal epochs. Normally at this point, let's see, I wonder can I ask people to read, Tim? Is that too hard to do at this point?
No, I think so. Let me check the setting real quick to see if everyone can mute themselves. Yeah, I need to change that. It's going to mute you also, but unmute yourself and then other people can.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's from you. Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't see it go back. I'm sorry. I was asking if Trudy could read this paragraph. Would you be willing to do that, Trudy?
She's on mute, maybe.
Oh, but you're still on mute.
Thank you. I would be delighted. From the inception of life on an evolutionary planet to the time of its final flowering in the era of light and life, there appear upon the stage of world action at least 7 epochs of human life. These successive ages are determined by the planetary missions of the divine sons, and on an average inhabited world, these epochs appear in the following order.
Okay, so that's going to be the next slide. I do want to point out they use, the authors or the inditers, if you wish, use the terms age, epoch, and also dispensation, which means something somewhat different. But if you see dispensation in the context of what we're talking about, that's what it's talking about. And there are certain planned events that are going to happen. So here is, I don't want to mess with anything, so I'm going to just leave it. I tried to make it big. This is a normal world. Pre-planetary prince, before any revelation has arrived, but Marilynn is correct, even though it's not a revelation, the left carriers are very definitely, they've got their fingerprints all over this stuff. The planet, whenever it says post, it means beginning with the arrival of and during the rest of that age. So after the planetary prince comes, Marilynn read some of the things that we're supposed to accomplish. When those things have reached fruition, the planetary prince sticks around, but then we get Adam and Eve, and we get to the post-Adamic stage. This is a little sexist because I just took the exact phrasing as the section titles are from the paper. After that, we get the magisterial son. Marilynn mentioned that's a paradise son, as is the Bistole son. They're both avonals, I think, aren't they?
I don't think so, but.
Okay, well, anyway. And then finally, the Trinity teacher sons arrive, and we get to the teacher son stage, leading to the first era of light and life. That's normal. And I don't know whether it was Barb or Chris who pointed out that when when things deviate, it seems like the powers that be get more interested. So they're boy, are we interesting. Okay, these lines show, oops, planetary prince rebelled. And so we got off. So now we're on a new vector. I like that word vector for what we're talking about here, because we still are going to end up at light and life sooner or later, but we got to come from a different direction. And this is simplistic in terms of how different we are. All right, but then we get Adam and Eve and we start moving forward again towards light and life. Oops, but they kind of messed up and things got off a little bit. So we kind of went backwards and we're off again. So the next three things here, you may notice they're not over here because they don't happen. Michael happens in bestows himself as his final bestowal, 1 out of every 10 million worlds. Because Michael came, Melchizedek anticipated and came 2,000 years earlier. And the order that we're going to look at these is Michael first, then Melchizedek, because Melchizedek only had his revelation because Michael was coming. And when Michael got here, of course, he lived the life of Jesus. And because it was only a 35-year bestowal, as opposed to pre-bestowals and then a long thousands of years and go 10,000 to, it was 100,000, wasn't it, Barbara? Years that a bestowal son can be here, but Michael was only here for a while, and boy, was he good, but that's not enough to finish his age. So all three of these are really part of the age of the bestowal son. But notice, we've skipped finishing these two, and we've skipped this one altogether, and the magisterial son is more dimensional than it looks like. So this box Ken wrote, which I thought was pretty good, question mark, well, what's next? We don't know. We'll look at a couple quotes to say, but we're just out of order, which means that I like to call the Urantia book the human revelation. I mean, it's coming from other things. And as Marilynn likes to point out, most of the papers come from sons, most of them, not all of them, but most of them. And it's still a sun-produced thing, but we've got to be doing a lot of this, which says I think we have some responsibility to try to move that sailboat a little bit more in the right direction towards light and life, even if that isn't going to happen for a long time. So we are out of sequence. Is that a bad thing? Well, it's a problematic thing. And there's a lot of good things about it. We've talked about that, but I was making this point in my group last night, and I want you to, there's some things that I think that we need to be clear about. So the consequences of the failed first two revelations, the planetary prince, the Calgary rebellion, and the Adam and Eve default, is what this next thing is about. The background is supposed to indicate chaos. I thought it was pretty good. So the planetary rebellion of Caligastia. As we learned last night, once the planetary rebellion occurred as a part of the Lucifer rebellion, we began our wayward journey. There's another word that somebody said today that was really good. I think was it Katie? I don't remember, but that was good too. But I like wayward. The consequences were vast. And let's see, did I just skip one? No. Barb, would you like to read that quotation?
With the arrival of the planetary prince, a new dispensation begins. Government appears on Earth, and the advanced tribal epoch is attained. Great social strides are made during a few thousand years of this regime. Under normal conditions, mortals attain a high state of civilization during this age. They do not struggle so long in barbarism as did the Urantia races. But life on an inhabited world is so changed by rebellion that you can have little or no idea of how such a regime on a normal planet.
Isn't it going? No, there's a third one. Did I get rid of it? Did you get rid of it? Well, there's a commentary that I wanted to make after this. At the end of the problems of the Lucifer Rebellion, and I think this has been quoted several times, there's the statement that more good than bad has come from the Lucifer Rebellion. This to me kind of fits hand in glove with the Urantia moda that the greatest affliction in the universe is never to have been afflicted. Without problems, we don't grow. But what is never said is that you're supposed to go looking for afflictions. The beauty, the benefit is that when we have problems, we deal with them. We respond to them. We grow. We deal with what's happened. That does not mean, however, that more good has come from the rebellion of Caligastia than would have come had it not happened. And the many uses of words like catastrophe and calamity and stronger words than that, and the fact that Gabriel was there during the entire war trying to talk him out of it, because even though our very merciful and freedom-loving Michael, I really think we have a good Michael, wanted people to make up their own minds and gave more freedom to do that. If he could have stopped it, he would have, because it's better to stop it. Once it happened, then you deal with it and you make things better. So we have to remember that moving forward, the best thing to do is try to get things right. But when things get off, then we deal with them. And that's where we are here. So the next problem we have is Adam and Eve. And they're not entirely to blame for this. Because of the planetary rebellion, our Adam and Eve were faced with enormous obstacles in their effort to uplift Urantia as the second epical revelation. Could you read both quotes here? Let's see. Kurt, Sarah.
Okay, there we go. Adam was confronted with a well-nigh hopeless task when with his beautiful mate, he was transported from Jerusalem to this dark and confused planet. All in all, there probably never was a more disheartening miscarriage of wisdom on any planet in all Nebadon. But it is not surprising that these missteps occur in the affairs of the evolutionary universes. We are part of a gigantic creation, and it is not strange that everything does not work in perfection. Our universe was not created in perfection. Perfection is our eternal goal, not our origin.
I think this entire quote and the whole tone of dealing with Adam and Eve, yeah, they kind of messed up, but the whole tone of it is, it reeks of some comments that Tim made Thursday night that without things like this, mercy can't get triggered. And this just is flowing with the sense of mercy from Michael of Nebadon. But as a consequence of the Adamic default, Cece, would you read, please?
Yeah, you want me to read both?
Yes, please.
Paragraphs? Okay. Your world is a full dispensation and more behind the average planetary schedule. Adam and Eve made a mighty contribution to the speedy civilization and accelerated biologic progress of the human race. They left a great culture on Earth, but it was not possible for such an advanced civilization to survive in the face of the early dilution and the eventual submergence of the Adamic inheritance. It is the people who make a civilization. Civilization does not make the people.
You know, I always start out with about 10 times as many quotes, and they're relevant because of the incredible integration of the Urantia book, but then I need. And this one was almost on the chopping block, except it does address some things that are important. But the biggest thing I like about it is the last two sentences, because this applies. I think this, whoops, that didn't work. I think this also applies to us. It is the people who make a civilization. Civilization does not make the people. And that's kind of what we need to do. See if that works. It did. It worked. So this brings us to the Michael Bestow on Urantia. And again, this is not chronological. The decision is, though, because as a result of those two miscarried early revelations and the situation that Urantia found it in, we got the Michael Bestow. A creator's son, so the Bestows and their purposes. Our Michael become Jesus, must bestow himself 7 times from higher personalities to lower, culminating in living an incarnated life as a physical evolutionary will creature on a material planet. Upon completion of these 7 bestowals, that Michael's son becomes a master son, one in sovereign rulership of his local universe realm, which is what these are about. But these are hugely important paragraphs. And so let me see. Ted Blaney, could you read these, please?
Okay. The bestowals of the creator's sons and their purposes. The purpose of these creature incarnations is to enable such creators to become wise, sympathetic, just, and understanding sovereigns. These divine sons are innately just, but they become understandably merciful as a result of these successive bestowal experiences. They are naturally merciful, but these experiences make them merciful in new and additional ways. These bestowals are the last steps in their education and training for the sublime task of ruling the local universes in divine righteousness and by just judgment. Though numerous incidental benefits accrue to the various worlds, systems, and constellations, as well as to the different orders of universe intelligences affected and benefited by these bestowals, still they are primarily designed to complete the personal training and universe education of the creator son himself. These bestowals are not essential to the wise, just, and efficient management of a local universe, but they are absolutely necessary to a fair, merciful, and understanding administration of such a creation.
Notice that in these 2 paragraphs, which are back to back in paper 119, the word merciful comes up 4 times. And a really important word here is this one right here, primarily. Later, we will see there are 2 purposes. And we're talking about the 7th bestowal, the lowest one, the one on a physical planet, which Michael chose to do on Urantia. There's 2 purposes, but the primary purpose is his experience as a creator's son, to give himself education, training, and to become merciful. The creator's sons, when you look at the creator's sons, you see both the Father and the eternal Son. And that mercy, that love applied, that applied love, which becomes mercy that we saw earlier, that Marilynn read, is in the creator's sons when they see what's it like to be one of their creatures. They're already kind, they're already merciful, they're already aware, but now they become more so. And that's what they need to do to become sovereign. Judy Farrow, would you like to read, please?
Sorry, I have to find the person. I can't always see it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you did it in mass. Okay, I'm going to ask Tom Allen next, so I can give you a heads up after Judy. No?
A certain standard of intellectual and spiritual development is attained on an inhabited world. A paradise bestowal son always arrives. On normal worlds, he does not appear in the flesh until the races have ascended to the highest levels of intellectual development and ethical attainment. But on Urantia, the bestowal son, even your own creator son, appeared at the close of the Adamic dispensation, but that is not the usual order of events on the worlds of space.
It's kind of interesting when you start putting them together, and I did not include all of them, how often they'll throw in don't forget, things didn't happen in the normal order. And there it is again. And this is a huge change in the normal order of things. The Paradise Bestowal son, who is not a creator son, and read the passage about it because it's fascinating. But our Bestowal son was only one in 10 million, and that is that we got the creator son. And here is a response. Did you find Judy yet? No? Okay, let's see. Okay, Judy, do you want to read or not?
Okay, I was allowed to unmute. We then not only realized that our creator and friend was taking the most precarious step in all his career, apparently risking his position and authority on this bestowal as a helpless infant, but we also understood that his experience in this final and mortal bestowal would eternally enthrone him as the undisputed and supreme sovereign of the universe of Nebadon. For a third of a century of Earth time, all eyes in all parts of this local universe were focused on Urantia. We well understood the intensity of the struggle which would ensue when our ruler condescended to incarnate on Urantia in the humble form and likeness of mortal flesh.
Notice some of these words. Thank you, Judy. Thank you for jumping in there, Tom. Precarious, risk, struggle, humble form. This is our creator's son, our now sovereign master son of our local universe. And it says all eyes were focused on Urantia, but I have a feeling during much of it, all those eyes had hands over them at times. So here's a new subtopic, Urantia's good fortune. Paula, could you read this? I'm not intentionally jumping around first names for you, Tim, but you did say last night that having the opportunity to be our tech person has been very interesting for you. So I'm trying to contribute.
Urantia's good fortune. When the worlds have become ripe for spiritualization, the bestowal son arrives. Once in each local universe, when the creator's son prepares for his terminal bestowal on some evolutionary world, as occurred when Michael of Nebadon appeared on Urantia to bestow himself upon your mortal races. Only one world in near 10 million can enjoy such a gift.
Why don't you read that one too, Paula, because they're kind of a pair.
Urantia's good fortune. Misfortune has not, however, been the sole lot of Urantia. This planet has also been the most fortunate in the local universe of Nebadon. Urantians should count it all gain if the blunders of their ancestors and the mistakes of their early world rulers so plunged the planet into such a hopeless state of confusion, all the more confounded by evil and sin, that this very background of darkness should so appeal to Michael of Nebadon that he selected this world as the arena wherein to reveal the loving personality of the Father in heaven. It is not that Urantia needed a creator son to set its tangled affairs in order. It is rather that the evil and sin on Urantia afforded the creator son a more striking background against which to reveal the matchless love, mercy, and patience of the Paradise Father.
I don't know about you. By the way, the two, well, we're getting to it, so I'll wait and then make the point. I think one of the things that we forget about so much is not just mercy, it's not just love, it's not just graciousness, it's our Michael is very courageous. So now we get into the revelation itself. Here's the quote I was thinking about. George, could you read, are you there? George Philosophos, are you there? Okay, but try not to read it so stiffly as your picture seemed to be before.
I couldn't unmute there for a minute. The Michael Bistow's son, Jesus Revelation. Michael had a double purpose in the making of these 7 bestowals upon the various orders of his universe creatures. First, he was completing the required experience in creature understanding, which is demanded of all creator sons before they assume complete sovereignty. Second, he was aspiring to the privilege of representing the maximum authority of the Paradise Trinity, which can be exercised in the direct and personal administration of a local universe.
So this is what I was talking about. Here's the double purpose. First, completing his experience, so he is an experienced and more merciful creator son. And second, representing the Trinity to us. And so Marilynn said before, God knowing man and man knowing God, and that parallels that. Marilynn, would you read the introduction?
Sure. The Michael Bestow son, Jesus Revelation. Among the advice Michael received from his Paradise counselor, a manual regarding the contributions to Urantia and the universe of Nebadon was,
Go ahead and read the whole page.
function largely in the role of a teacher, give attention first to the liberation and inspiration of man's spiritual nature. Next, illuminate the darkened human intellect, heal the souls of men, and emancipate their minds from age-old fears. And then, in accordance with your mortal wisdom, minister to the physical well-being and material comfort of your brothers in the flesh. Live the ideal religious life for your inspiration and edification of all your universe. Pour out upon the planet of your bestowal the spirit of truth, and thus make all normal mortals on that isolated sphere immediately and fully accessible to the ministry of the segregated presence of our Paradise Father, the thought adjusters of the realm.
Now, between these two paragraphs and the one in the next page, I was trying to get, without going on and on, because you can do 700 pages in this, what Jesus was trying to accomplish besides his own education. So obviously this is not sufficient, but it gives us a sense. So Larry Bowman, would you read next? And I want to point out, if it seems like I'm going back and forth between boys and girls, it's because I spend much of my life teaching middle and high school kids online.
Okay. Even on normal evolutionary worlds, the realization of the worldwide brotherhood of man is not an easy accomplishment. On a confused and disordered planet like Urantia, such an achievement requires a much longer time and necessitates far greater effort. Unaided social evolution can hardly achieve such happy results on a spiritually isolated sphere. Religious revelation is essential to the realization of brotherhood on Urantia. While Jesus has shown the way to the immediate attainment of spiritual brotherhood, The realization of social brotherhood on your world depends much on the achievement of the following personal transformations and planetary adjustments. 1, social fraternity. 2, intellectual cross-fertilization. 3, ethical awakening. 4, political wisdom. And 5, spiritual insight.
So those last three paragraphs that we read are about what Michael/Jesus was hoping to accomplish during the short time he was here to benefit the individual, society, and the planet as a whole. And since these were his objectives, among many other things, that's not easy to do, especially given where the world was a few millennia after Adam and Eve had departed. Which gets us to this. Marilynn, would you read the slide, please?
The first two unusual revelations are to support the Jesus revelation, one to prepare for it and one to help it develop. The revelation of Jesus, a Michael creator son, becoming the Bistole son of a planet, is a once in 10 million planets occurrence, as well as being us at least 1.5 dispensations ahead of our planetary mortal epic schedule. In addition, our Michael's choosing to fulfill his 7th bestowal responsibility on Urantia not only was highly unusual, it has spawned, thus far, 2 other epical revelations that are not on a normal planet's agenda.
So I'm suggesting that we need to think of both Melchizedek and the Urantia book as being part of the Bestowal Sun Age. And you'll see more things contributing that. And you'll notice how I cleverly have Jesus looking down at us. Did I go too far? No, we just read that, right?
No.
No?
Well,
Wait a minute. Yeah, no, we didn't. So continue, Marilynn.
The first 2 unusual revelations are to support the Jesus revelation, one to prepare for it and one to help it develop.
The revelations are, okay, so this got screwed up here.
The revelation of Macaveno Melchizedek was an emergency revelation prompted by Michael's decision to bestow himself on Urantia. Macaveno arrived 2,000 years before Jesus to prepare the world for his arrival. The Urantia book revelation came 2 millennia after the life of Jesus to further the benefits of that bestowal. The dispensation begun by Jesus' life is not yet complete. Thus, Urantia's 3rd revelation, Macaveno Melchizedek, and its 5th, the Urantia book, are both part of the revelation on Michael and Abaddon.
So that's why we did that first, because it was well after the decision to come here was made that the Melchizedeks, and there's a wonderful quote, but it was one of the ones that got cut, first asked if they could do something about this, and they were kind of put on their own. And when they're put on their own, they decided, yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll do something about it. And that's why Macaveno came. And by the way, don't forget, originally our in-person summer study seminar was supposed to be about Melchizedek because this is the 4,000th anniversary of his being here. What a wonderful thing. So now we get into the Melchizedek, unusual, although it precedes Michael. The unusual emergency revelation needed for Melchizedek to precede Michael's bestowal. Because of the intensity of the struggle which would ensue when our ruler condescended to incarnate on Urantia in the humble form and likeness of mortal flesh, because of the gap between the lack of progress of Urantia and the normal status of a planet receiving a bestowal sun, a great deal of planning was needed to take place before Michael's arrival, Jesus' birth. So Urantia, again, deviated from the norm. Marilynn? No, let me go to somebody else. Gail, would you like to read?
Urantia has never been host to an avonal son on a magisterial mission, which normally is the age that follows Adam and Eve. The regular sequence of paradise sons on your planet was wholly deranged by the appearance of your creator son on his terminal bestowal 1900 years ago. Revealed truth was threatened with extinction during the millenniums which followed the miscarriage of the Adamic mission on Urantia.
Again, we're off. Okay, let's see. Phil, would you read this one?
Let's see, calipers. Okay.
You're on mute, Phil.
Amy, you can.
You're still on mute. Something's not happening. There we go.
There we go. And it was in consequence of having been thrown so completely on their own resources that Macaveno and Melchizedek, one of the 12 planetary receivers, volunteered to do that which had been done only 6 times in all the history of Nebadon, to personalize on Earth as a temporary man of the realm, to bestow himself as an emergency son of world ministry. Permission was granted for this adventure by the Salvington authorities, and the actual incarnation of Macaveno to Melchizedek was consummated near what was to become the city of Salem in Palestine.
You know, I've been saying one historical change leads to other historical changes, such as the first 2 revelations leading to Michael becoming our bestowal son, which led to Macaveno deciding to come down here. And now Macaveno has become a species of one, it would appear, as we'll read later. Things are much, much different for his life. So a little bit about what he accomplished.
Last one too.
Monica Kemp, please. There you go.
Am I good? Oh, great. Thank you. Melchizedek taught that at some future time, another son of God would come in the flesh as he had come, but that he would be born of a woman. And thus did Melchizedek prepare the way and set the monotheistic stage of world tendency for the bestowal of an actual paradise son of the one God, whom he so vividly portrayed as the Father of all.
And now it goes on much further, but he had to be there. So now we get to the other unique revelation. Melchizedek's have personalized as a revelation. I think it says a total of 4 times and 4 times before us. But this one's unique. And I didn't find the quote to support that when I told you that, Tim, yesterday, but even so. Bruce Brown, would you read, please? I tell you what, I'll read
there
this.
There we go.
Yeah, good.
You got me?
Yeah,
as it was with the Macaveno and Melchizedek revelation 2,000 years before Jesus' birth on Urantia, revelation is a unique step in the annals of planetary mortal epics and must be connected to the 4th revelation, that of Michael's bestowal. The Urantia book updates the gospel of the kingdom to help it towards its completion, even as Macaveno was needed to set the stage for Jesus.
So here we want to get into the purposes of, and one of them is alluded to in the latter part of that. But again, Marilynn, read this one, okay?
Despite the miracle and success of Michael's bestowal, the world is still far away from where it would be normally. If you could be transplanted from your backward and confused world to some normal planet now in the Bistole Sun Age,
Post-Bistole.
Post-Bistole Sun Age, you would think you had been translated to the heaven of your traditions. You would hardly believe that you were observing the normal evolutionary workings of a mortal sphere of human habitation.
So technically, we are in the post-Bistole Sun Age. It's not reached the next one after it, but we are in the post-Bistole Sun Age, but we never had the one that would have come before it. Ken, would you read this page?
In the first two paragraphs of the Urantia book, a divine counselor addresses the problems and needs that caused the creation of the Urantia book Revelation. In the minds of the mortals of Urantia, that being the name of your world, there exists great confusion respecting the meaning of such terms as God, divinity, and deity. Human beings are still more confused and uncertain about the relationships of the divine personalities designated by these numerous appellations. It is exceedingly difficult to present enlarged concepts and advanced truth in our endeavor to expand cosmic consciousness and enhance spiritual perception.
So the last part, and remember, these are the first two paragraphs of the foreword. It starts right out with purpose. Marilynn mentioned this very early, and it's a really important thing to remember, to expand cosmic consciousness and enhance spiritual perception. That's the overall purpose. But we can break that down to something that is really important. We can go on and on and on because the whole book is giving us reasons that it exists. But this is really important too. So let's see. Bobby, would you read this page, please?
Among the most important tasks of the Urantia book Revelation is that it is a restatement for modern times of the religion of Jesus. Even the restatement of the religion of Jesus must develop a new and appropriate symbolism. Modern man must find some adequate symbolism for his new and expanding ideas, ideals, and loyalties. This enhanced symbol must arise out of religious living, spiritual experience, and this higher symbolism of a higher civilization must be predicated on the concept of the fatherhood of God and be pregnant with the mighty ideal of the brotherhood of man.
Now that quote is wonderful because it not only gives us, in the second part of it, after the first sentence, a sense of what it is that we need to be pursuing and what we're teaching and using symbols to do it, but it very clearly tells us this is considered a restatement of the religion of Jesus, and it has to be updated. Well, let's see. Stuart, could you read this page, please?
Yes, from 196. The time is ripe to witness the figurative resurrection of the human Jesus from his burial tomb amidst the theological traditions and the religious dogmas of 19 centuries. Jesus of Nazareth must not be longer sacrificed to even the splendid concept of the glorified Christ. What a transcendent service if, through this revelation, the Son of Man should be recovered from the tomb of traditional theology and be presented as the living Jesus to the church that bears his name and to all other religions. Be not discouraged. Human evolution is still in progress, and the revelation of God to the world in and through Jesus shall not fail.
This revelation means the Urantia book. And our task, among other things, is to bring the teachings of Jesus to all the world so that everybody has had a chance to receive it. And that is what it's going to take, at least the writers of part 4 surmise, for the age of Jesus, the dispensation, to be finished, the post-bestowal sun age to be finished. And there's several other quotations that basically say, if you feel the most important thing for us to do is to distribute the gospel of Jesus, well, we're doing that when we teach the ideas of the Urantia book, whether it's directly from the text or not. So the obvious question, since we're out there in the middle of the lake and not quite sure how to get to shore, is where do we go next? And here's going to be what your groups are going to do. Where does Urantia go next? So here's our chart again. Remember, we got off. And we started to move, but then we got off again. And even though we're moving in the right direction now, if we really were to do this with more specificity, I think we would find that right now these vector arrows are a little too long. They'd be a lot shorter. And maybe they're kind of getting in the right direction, but we're tacking because we're still moving into the wind. Yeah, I like that. So we need a new path forward. We need a new way to get to light and life. I'm going to summarize these because I think it's important to get just a few of the many places where the Urantia book does kind of hint where we need to go. The sons of the next order after the Bestow sons are the Trinity teacher sons, and they are generally way in advance of the Bestow sons, or where things were when the Bestow son came, I should say. And we're out of step with our sister spheres, meaning almost everybody else, in that Jesus has promised to return. So there's another consequence. He will fulfill, but nobody knows whether his second coming will precede or follow the appearance of a magisterial or teacher son. Our good friend Marilynn, who is probably teaching the Seraphim on the Mansion World right now, really felt the magisterial son was coming any day. But here's the quote I was just referring to. You should understand that when this gospel of the kingdom shall have been proclaimed to all the world for the salvation of all peoples, it doesn't mean everybody is going to get it, but it's got to be satisfactorily proclaimed to all the world. When the fullness of the ages come, the Father will send you another dispensational bestowal, or the Son of Man will return to judge the age. My opinion is that we're further away from that, but that's the topic for debate. And here's what I was thinking about with Macaveno. And this is all guesswork. Some believe that Macaveno will not come to take personal direction until the end of the current dispensation. Others hold that he is vicegerent prince, may not come until Michael returns to Urantia. Others look for Melchizedek's appearance any day or hour. And there's other things where they say he seems to have been separated from his other Melchizedeks. So you make a little bit of a change, and we know this. I guess in evolution, it's the butterfly effect, a little tiny change. And a lot of things change after that. And that's what we're looking at today. So here is our task. Oh, we need to put this in the, you didn't copy that too, did you?
No, I didn't. Put it in the chat.
That's what I said. So here are the questions we want you to ask. There are 3 references on the next page. What can we do as individuals to help Urantia move in a better direction? How can the dissemination of the teachings of the Urantia book help civilization move forward? Will there need to be further epical revelations after the Urantia book to finish this epoch of our bestowal son? And do you think Urantia's arrival in the first stage of light and life will be greatly behind schedule? So how many groups were there, Tim?
8.
All right, 1 minute apiece or less.
I suggest you just take volunteers rather than worrying about who's next. It takes too long.
Well, I'll jump in if you want. I'm ready to go. We had a broad discussion on the issues where some people talked about a more basic gospel ministry and the importance of reaching people at that level. And that was kind of tied into thoughts about how superstition is still very much a problem on the planet, and that people are lost in all kinds of ways, either with faith or off in a weird direction, or not having faith at all. then there was also talk about maybe there could be support for the grassroots level. We didn't get into specifics about that, but that was mentioned. It was mentioned about not advertising evil, even with all the problems in the world. We should stay positive in our focus and put our best foot forward that way. And to at the same time try to take advantage of all the negativity that's going on in one way or another and use it to our advantage. So COVID leading to a lot more Zoom meetings was one example of that.
Okay, we
got to stop there.
Got to go on. Jenna, are you a group reporter? Are you reporting
Yes,
for a group?
I can. Yes, I can report. We talked about just a second. We talked about developing a relationship with God, our own personal relationship with Jesus, and that one of the best ways to try and go out and help and be of service to further the revelation, to develop our own relationship, so that when we go out and interact with people, then they see us, and in that we can begin to ask them questions like, what is your relationship with God, or what is your spiritual path, and begin to ask people those types of questions to try and bring them to talk about their experience and truly listen to their experience.
Okay.
And that was it.
Okay, going on to David Tenney, and remember it's 1 minute. I'd like to finish pretty close afternoon because we've got 2 more things happening today. David?
Our group focused on both what we can do personally as well as a UB community to further our planetary progress. One thing that we talked about was spreading the religion of Jesus, of personal experience, emphasizing personal experience, emphasizing love of God and one another, and emphasizing spiritual communion to then inform our action in the world. We also talked some about infusing cosmic consciousness into our culture more, both individually and as a group, and emphasizing value and meaning-oriented exchanges with others, whether that be on YouTube or internet or in person. And then we also spoke about meeting people where they are in their life, uplifting them individually, personally, both personally and spiritually. So another thing was just expanding on what we have in common with others in the same way that Jesus did, and then expanding on that.
Okay, thank you. Bill, you want to do it or you want Paula to do it? She volunteered with notes.
I can do it. At least I'll start it. One of the things that was said was that there's too much fighting about differences between the religions. And another thing, Wilson Boynton's attitude was mentioned as the opposite of that. And Malala was mentioned. Her experience of courage could not have happened without our world's problems. So that's 35 seconds.
All right, we'll go on. That's 5. Tim?
So our group got a little sidetracked because some crazy person in the group thought the next epical revelation was going to be hundreds of thousands of years from now, and some people thought it was going to be much sooner. But eventually, I think the best point that came out of it was that spiritual growth, and you need fellowship to foster that and promote it. It doesn't happen in isolation, but it happens one person at a time.
That's 6. 2 more? Somebody else?
An eclectic smattering from Group 7. Kay put our dilemma succinctly. What are old Urantians going to do? We're a 50-plus demographic, here. What are we going to do in the end of our lives? So Andrew indicated that the fundamentalist Christianity versus Urantian philosophy is a bit of a dilemma. How do we handle that, and how do we make Urantian philosophy appealing? Well, can we deal with the fear mongering and all of that, and somehow express this message of love? Dennis mentioned that we have some unique possibilities with the Urantian religion. If you look, for instance, at Mahayana Buddhism, he was saying, and look at the fact that that might have been influenced by Jesus to gain it through the years, that there's an interesting possible connect that might bring East and West together through the Urantia book. Very interesting possibilities there. Paul Wampel indicated that we can let this teaching affect us, and so did Kay, that we really need to take seriously this spiritual pressure from above idea, that we need to be transformed. What does it do? It gives us a dynamic morality. It changes how we're able to respond in real time to people, but it also enhances our ability to love. This is a pressure that's not pressure at all. Kay said we need to learn how to love the way the Mother Spirit and all of her children are teaching us to love. And Bill underscored that, saying that personal spiritual growth has more effect on the world, wide circles of effect than we even know. So we need to focus on our own personal spiritual growth. Tom said, seek first the kingdom of God. And Marvin pointed to the fact that there are essential spiritual truths that need to be out there. The spirit-child relationship, spiritual brothers and sisters, all of those wonderful truths of the indwelling spirit, love, eternal life, and faith.
Okay, we have a short close after the last person, just one slide, and that's it, just and kind of upper. So the last person's Clint. Go ahead.
I guess so. Our group had a lot of great comments. One was there's no need to arguing about what revelation is coming next. Even the indicters of the Urantia book don't seem to know. What we do know is it's up to us to prepare for that. And God is really needing us to help repair the damage of the Lucifer rebellion. Anything we can do is important. Right now, the world is at a teachable or serviceable moment, and helping the world to come together, partly through education, might be a good idea. We have a lot of uneducated people who can't agree about anything right now. But attacking the planet and the spiritual aspect of Macaveno's, I can't say it. The idea of one God, the I am, would be a good thing to get back to at this point.
Thank you. Thank you all. Okay, one last slide. And before that, two quick comments that I'm going to give myself the advantage of doing since I put all the work in here, and Marilynn did too. Somebody mentioned the wonderful work that Gained and Jesus did in looking at the other religions. I think into that hopper we have to put in culture, every culture and the history of culture. I don't think anybody ever spent as much of his life learning about other cultures and was as well versed in history as Jesus did, given his opportunities. Learn not just learn the history and the culture too. And the other thing, we are in the age of the post-Bestow sun. And that's what we need to be contributing to, whatever the next revelation is. And I would remind you of a very telling story before Adam and Eve came. Van and Amadon gathered workers to build the garden. And since they didn't see it coming, many people left. They needed those workers. We are not going to see the next revelation, most likely, but we've got to keep on tending the garden and not give up, and be patient. So Marilynn, would you read this last quote, or the first one? I'll read the last, and I'll read the first one, you read the last one. The great hope of Urantia lies in the possibility of a new revelation of Jesus with a new and enlarged presentation of his saving message, which would spiritually unite in loving service the numerous families of his present day professed followers.
A new and fuller revelation of the religion of Jesus is destined to conquer an empire of materialistic secularism and to overthrow a world sway of mechanistic naturalism. Urantia is now quivering on the very brink of one of the most amazing and enthralling epics of social readjustment, moral quickening, and spiritual enlightenment.
Thank you. Appreciated everybody's contributions.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Kulieke. Awesome.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys.
See you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Awesome.
Excellent.
Thank you.
David and Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you
Excellent.
very much.
Just an excellent presentation, Marilynn, David.
Very much so. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time and effort. That was a great presentation.
Thank you.
Beg to second that.